settle down. I want our students from Chabad Hebrew School to show our guests the utmost respect. We have a very special guest this morning, but I'm going to wait until it's completely quiet. A few weeks ago, I got a telephone call from one of our neighbors here in Barney. And she told me that she had something that was very special. Something that we would all appreciate. And when she told me the story, I said, this is such a tremendous story. It's not a story that I want to keep to myself. It's a story that I want her to share with all of us here at Hebrew School. And so that's why we are getting together this morning. And we invited all the parents to come, because this is a story that really tells us about the Jewish people, about the strength of the Jewish people. I'm not going to tell you more. Maybe I'll tell you a little more after we hear the story. But I would like to introduce Susan Bloomfield, who is our new friend and a neighbor. And when she heard that the synagogue was built, she wanted to come and present us with something very special. Susan?
Well, I had no idea that the synagogue would be so full. Thank you very much, Rabbi Moon. Thank you very much. It's my honor to be here. It's my pleasure to be here. Can everybody hear me in the back? Can you hear okay? Okay. So what I wanted to do today, as Rabbi Moon said, I've had this menorah in my family, a Christian family, for many, many, many years. And I thought it would be interesting to share with you how I ended up with this menorah. So I talked to my mother, and over the years she had imparted to us pieces of history and pieces of information that led me to research it further. So I'm going to tell you, mainly for the children, so this is for you children to hear, and you can ask me any questions you want afterwards, but it's a story that would probably be interesting for all of you. The story takes place in Holland, in a place called Den Haag, and that's right outside of Amsterdam. Now, my grandpa Bernie, he wasn't in Holland during the war. Grandpa Bernie had come over here to Canada, but his family was in Holland. His family knew that the German soldiers were going to come into Holland, and they were terrified. They knew what the German soldiers were going to do. They knew that anybody that didn't believe the policies that the German soldiers had and didn't listen to them, and if you had a different religious belief than the German soldiers, then you were in big trouble. And particularly your people, the Jewish people, unfortunately, the German soldiers were very cruel and very mean. Well, my Uncle Gerard, who lived in Holland, and his brothers, Uncle Jan and Uncle Pete, they didn't want anything to do with these German soldiers. So they had friends, and some of their friends were Jewish people. Why not? We all get together, we all love one another. And this Jewish family was terrified. They were very frightened because they knew what was going to happen. So there was the mother, the father, and the teenage boy. So Uncle Gerard had them over one day and said, what can we do? What should we do? We have to do something to help you. So they looked through the house. Uncle Gerard had a very, very sick little boy. He was about 6 years old. I think some of you are 6 years old here. He was very, very sick. He couldn't even leave his bed. So he laid in bed in the dark. And in his room, it was interesting because there was a door. And they would put a dresser in front of that door. that door, if you went through that door, you could climb the stairs and go up into the attic. And that was the only way to get into the attic. So Uncle Gerard and his friends said, why don't we put you and your family up into the attic, we'll make it comfortable for you up there, and the soldiers won't find you. They moved a dresser in front of the door. So the soldiers periodically would come around. They were loud, and they'd come around, and they'd say, we hear that you're not following what we want you to do. You're not working in our, you're not working to help us, Gerard. Uncle Gerard, why aren't you doing this? And he would give a reason, and then they'd search the house. And they'd come upstairs, and he'd say, please don't go into my son's room, he's very sick. So they would look in, and they'd leave, they'd come back again. One time they came back with a German doctor, and they said, we want you to check this boy because we don't believe that they're telling the truth. So, sure enough, the doctor checked out the little boy, and he was sick. He was very sick. So they said, okay, we won't bother him anymore. And because of that, the Jewish family was able to be safe up in the attic. They were able to practice their faith, and everything worked out fine. So that was something I think that maybe, I think God worked that out, actually, to be honest with you. Now, when the war ended, I don't know whether you know what a famine is, but you know when there's no food, there's nothing to eat. It's something that we've never had here in Canada. But at the end of the war, there was no food left for the people to eat. And they were very, very hungry. So the family, Uncle Gerard and the Jewish family, were very happy when the war ended and they could come down and celebrate. But they had nothing to eat. What they ate were lots of turnips, lots of potatoes, and what they ate most of was tulip bulbs. So you see the tulips growing up in the spring here? Well, they ate the bulbs at the bottom of the turnip underneath the ground, and that's what they lived on. Many, many people in Holland died because of the starvation. It was called the Hunger Winter, I think it was called. And that was the winter right before the war ended. So people were very, very hungry. Now, when Uncle Gerard and his friends got together again and they were allowed to come out of the attic, they were so grateful that they said, we have nothing to give you. We have nothing to give you at all, but we're going to give you this menorah because we were able to keep our faith. You helped us keep our faith. And the Germans could do anything that they wanted to them, but they could not take their faith away. They had such a strong faith. So I'm not sure what happened to the family. I think from what I hear, they probably left. They might have come to Canada. They might have gone to the U.S. I'm not sure where they went. But we're just very, very happy that they were fine and that everything worked out well for them. The reason I have this story from my grandpa Bernie is because Uncle Gerard, after the war, sent letters and letters, pages of letters to my grandpa. And they were in Dutch, so he would translate them and read them to my mother. My mother was a teenager at the time, so I don't know what happened to the letters. It's unfortunate they're gone now. But when Uncle Gerard died, that's when my grandpa went back to Holland and brought the menorah back. And when my grandpa died, I ended up with the menorah. It was passed on to me. So that's the story of my menorah. And I think it's had a really interesting journey. I think it's over 100 years old. It belonged to the Jewish family that kept their faith through everything that they went through. And then it was given to my family, the Christian family, as part of our heritage. So to me, it's an important piece, although I think it's more important that you have it. And I think it's time now for my menorah to find a home. Maybe it can be used again. And I just feel that this is a good home for it. So I'm very happy to give it to you. I'm very happy to have met Rabbi Bloom. And again, I'm just honored that you welcomed me
when I heard this story, I said, this is a story that I want to make sure our students hear, because that is very special. That tells us about the strength of our people, even through those terrible times. But it also tells us of the wonderful people that were there in Holland to save them. What your Uncle Gerard did is a tremendous good deed, a tremendous mitzvah, a kindness. And we're very appreciative of your kindness to give us this menorah, which we will use this Hanukkah. You know, Hanukkah is coming up just in a few weeks. We will be using it, and we will cherish this menorah here at the Hebrew School for many years to come. So thank you so much. I want to present you with something, and then maybe we could open the floor if there are a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Here's just a little gift from us, so that you'll remember us, and you're just around the corner, so I'm sure you'll come to visit. You'll see, I told Susan that we're putting together a nice display case in the admin area, and this menorah will be here for many, many years to come. Hopefully for another 100 years. So that will be very special. Are there any questions?
Is my grandpa still alive? No. My uncle? No, he's not alive anymore. When did he die?
You were talking about the uncle's son, right, Sasha?
Oh, that's a very good question. He died right after the war. He was so sick, but that's interesting because what my uncle, here's a nice little story. What my uncle had to do to get him medicine, because there was no medicine to be had. It was really hard to find medicine, and he needed medicine. I'm not sure what illness he had. But at one point, they knew that my uncle was working to help people that the Germans didn't want him to help. So they had their eye on him. So in order for him to get medicine for his son and to leave the house, he had to dress up as an old woman. So my uncle would put like ladies' clothes on and wigs and long coat and hunch over, and he'd go out and pretend that he was an old woman, and then he would go and try to find medicine for his son. But his son, unfortunately, I think because of the lack of food and lack of medicine, he died right after the war. Oh, well, we're not really sure. We think it might have been pneumonia. And back then they didn't have penicillin or antibiotics like they have now. So when you get pneumonia, you just get weaker and weaker, and if you can't overcome it, unfortunately, it can be deadly. So, he died. And he was a very...
So, you know, it's very interesting because the month of November happens to be Holocaust Education Month. So it's very timely that we get this menorah. Thank you again. If there are any more questions, I know it's dismissal now, so we'll let you go. But if there are any more questions, Susan will be here for a few minutes. This is a wonderful story of survival and continuity. And at Chabad Hebrew School, we're very proud to be the new home of this menorah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Just a reminder, there is no Hebrew School next Sunday, but we will see you in 2 weeks. Have a great afternoon.